Hello, BUL 3310, and welcome back to a video review. We're in the middle of week 4 right now, so I wanted to play a little bit of catch up with your discussion boards. You had quiz 2 that you guys all completed and did very well on, and also our team building deliverable 1, and now you're working on 2. So when I look this way, that's where my computer is, the laptop. iPad's here in front of me. So let's get into 2 questions that I saw from the quiz. You see the quiz, they're short, they're not very long, and they shouldn't take you that long. I give you a good chunk of time to do them. But remember, before starting any quiz, you want to make sure you review the materials from the previous weeks. And we only had a couple, so it's really important when you look at these to understand, everything's open book, open note. I just want you to understand and retain the material. That's the biggest thing concerning these quizzes. So one of the questions, they're all given in random order, so I really don't want to use question numbers, but I hope that you guys recall this question because it's pretty important. I was surprised to see how many people had actually got the question wrong. So it says, which of the following is not one of the basic elements for valid formation of a valid contract? So when you see a negative in the call of the question, you want to basically look and cover up that not, and then look down and think, what is part of a contract, okay? So for future purposes, those who have had me before probably know I love mnemonics, checklists, just write down by fire. You can just say, this is X, Y, Z, and there's no question about it. So how do we remember basically the elements of a contract? So if you were to put down OACLL, it doesn't really stand for anything, but it's an offer, acceptance, consideration, legal purpose, legal subject matter, and then it's a legal capacity, that I'm of age and I'm of sound mind. So those 5 things, okay, so an offer, acceptance, consideration, legality and subject matter, and then legal capacity to contract, those are the 5 elements of contracting. Now it all sounds well and fine until you start questioning every single element. Was it actually an offer, or was it an invitation to deal? Was it acceptance, or was it maybe a counteroffer? Was it consideration, or was it merely a gift, which is really not consideration at all? Legal subject matter. Were you actually contracting for something that you could? It was legal, it was by law, you could actually contract for it. And then legal capacity. Am I of age, or what is my mental capacity? Am I too old? Am I too inebriated to contract? What are the cases? Did I have the mindset? So that requisite mens rea, I had formulated the intent to contract. That's one of the big elements. So when you look at this, the answers provided are consideration, offer and acceptance, legal purpose, and then promissory estoppel. So the one obviously that is the answer here is promissory estoppel. Promissory estoppel is not, okay, it is not an element of contracting. It's actually a remedy. So when you look at remedies, think very literally, what can we do to fix the situation? So in contracting, the presumption never is that you have a contract. You have to prove you have a contract. So make sure you understand the difference between an agreement and a bona fide valid contract, because the word agreement and contract are not synonymous. We do not use those interchangeably in the law, even though a lot of lay people will use that interchangeably. An agreement, we can agree to anything, and because it's a video, I'm not going to be too creative, but if you and I have a transaction where I offer you money for an illicit drug that's not legal, and you give me that drug, and I've paid consideration, it's there, it wasn't a gift, and we're both of sound mind, we both have the capacity, but the problem is that L, the legal subject matter, we don't have it. We have an agreement, but we don't have a valid contract. So if you sold me something that I wanted as an illicit drug and illegal drug, and it wasn't just that, then obviously, I'm not going to call the police and say, I have some, baking soda sitting here, or I have some oregano sitting here. Can you please go arrest the person? I would really like my cocaine. I would really like my marijuana. I don't want these other things. That's not going to be a really successful 911 call. They're not going to enforce that contract for you. They're going to probably get a search warrant and try to arrest you. So please don't ever call the police if you don't get something that is not legally bargained for. Okay. I shouldn't have to say it, but it does kind of hammer home the point. So for contracting in general, you have to have all those 5 things there. But if something goes wrong, okay, something goes wrong, and say one of those elements was not there, but it still looks like you had a valid agreement, not a valid contract, but a valid agreement. So if you look at valid agreements versus valid contracts, okay, You say, geez, what's the difference? Well, something in there's missing if it's just an agreement, but it doesn't mean it's not enforceable in some realm. So generally, if we have a contract, remember you have to prove you have to have a contract. You cannot just, presume that you have a contract because it looks like you do. So once you can prove all those elements, you have a valid and enforceable contract, then your remedy in, Craptown, when something goes wrong, is that of a breach of contract. And your remedy is generally going to be outlined in that valid contract under a liquidated damages clause or some type of adjudicatory relief when one party doesn't do what they said they were going to. A much tougher situation is what we call promissory estoppel. I want to stop you from this promise. Either you didn't follow through on what you said you were going to do, or you didn't follow through on what you said you weren't going to do, okay? So when you look at promissory estoppel, I want you to think that the only time promissory estoppel is ever asserted on behalf of a party is where we don't really have a valid and enforceable contract. We have a mere agreement, but there are still some merits to it of enforceability. So instead of pursuing a remedy for a breach of contract, we would be pursuing remedies under what they call promissory estoppel, okay? So the long and short of it, or maybe for some of you the long and long of it, is that there are many remedies out there. There are many things in equity, in fairness to fix the other party, because in contracts, when something goes wrong, or in agreements when something goes wrong, the court looks and says, how can we put this party back into the original position in which they started, okay? So if you and I are buyers and sellers of oranges, I make orange juice and you are selling oranges to me. That's a good, so it falls under Article 2, sale of goods under the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, which we know has been adopted mostly in full by the Florida legislature, okay? So UCC Article 2 talks about sale of goods. So in that transaction, you would look through offer, acceptance, consideration, legality, legal subject matter, and make sure all those markers were hit. But now we're treated as what they call merchants. Merchants are people who deal in goods of this kind. So say you have a certain type of contract that's governed under a certain area of law, it might have its own set of remedies when things go severely wrong, okay? So I always like to bring up the house buying situation because when you look at that, there's not a lot of things that can fix a closing gone wrong, okay? So let me give you a situation. Say I'm a buyer of a house and the seller of the house, and we're at closing, okay? So everything's been done correctly. All the contingencies have been met. Everything is moving full force forward. We're to closing, and the seller says, I don't want to sell the house. Now, if I'm the buyer, I'm going to say, of course, why don't you want to sell the house? We've come this far. We're about to exchange everything. Why don't you want to sell your home? Oh, I don't feel like it. Well, okay, understood. But you don't have that option to not feel like it. What I'm going to do then is not necessarily ask you for your escrow back, right? If I'm the buyer, I don't want that escrow deposit back. I don't want that good faith deposit back. I want your house, and I'm ready to buy your house. So how in this whole mix would I get someone to buy the house or get someone to sell me the house? What I'm telling them is that I want you to specifically perform. I don't want your money, okay? You can give me a lot of it, but if, say the house is $200,000, $10,000, $5,000, I'm not really interested in that. I'm interested in the house. That's why I'm here. So instead of the person giving you monetary relief or a monetary remedy, you could actually seek to enforce the sale of the house through a remedy called specific performance. Okay, it's very closely related to things like promissory estoppel and other remedies such as rescission and reformation of contracts. But when you look at specific performance, it's a very interesting petition because basically what you're asking the court is, if I have to go to court over this seller, I'm going to have the court order you, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to have the court order you to do what you said you were going to do in that contract, which is sell me the home, okay? And I don't want your money. If money was going to fix everything, then I would have already accepted it. But I want the home. So how am I going to get you to do something that you don't want to do? Okay? And that's kind of tough in situations. Generally, it's easier to get somebody to do something than not to do something. I guess it depends on what it is. So when you look at it in a house buying context, think about where everything's going great and then something just goes wrong. How are you going to fix it? Just because someone doesn't feel like doing something anymore, you still have to get the court or a mediator to get them to actually sell you the house. You can't just pitch a fit and hope it works. So legally speaking, this is the long and the long of it, based from this question, when you look at a valid contract, once you have that, or you don't, then your next step is to say, what are the remedies? How are we going to fix this? Because lawyers, as much as we love problems, I guess we really like resolving them, because then that gives us an easier time next time we deal with it. So think about promissory estoppel in the context of a way to fix situations where you don't have necessarily a valid and enforceable true form contract, but you do have an agreement that has some merits to it. Okay, so the other question I wanted to take a look at real quick, it was a fact, situation, true and false. And it says, Chris Cornell is given an offer by a music publisher. Okay, so there's that first tier, an offer's been given. So when you see that Chris Cornell and the music publisher, you want to classify those parties. Who is the offeror, who's the one making the offer, and who's the offeree, the one accepting the offer, okay? So Chris Cornell here is the offeree. He's the one who can accept or reject, or what they call deny the offer, okay? So he says he's not interested in that offer because it's for less money than he believes he's worth. Okay, fair enough. He decides to make a counteroffer. His counteroffer does not terminate the original offer. Okay, so when you look at that sentence by itself, that's really what we're saying, is this true or is this false? The other two sentences, you don't get to question their validity. So the only sentence you're really focusing on is, does his counteroffer, does it terminate the original offer? And here, because it was focused in the negative, it's false. So his counteroffer does not terminate the original offer. Yes, it does. Okay, so if I come back at you and I give different terms and conditions that I want you to follow through with, now I become the offeree, offeror, and you become the offeree. Okay, so those words, those parties switch at any given time depending on what the transaction is. So where Chris Cornell in this situation started off as an offeree, someone who could accept, the minute he made the counter offer, now he becomes the offeror, the one who's in charge of making the offer. If the music publisher was to accept his terms and conditions, they would have accepted and moved on to consideration. So the premise is that counter offers, when you don't accept it, but you make a new offer, you change the original terms of the offer, like I said, his counter offer does not terminate the original offer. It's false, okay? So let's move forward here. I talked about those questions a little bit longer than I wanted to, but there's some points in contracting that I don't want you to ever miss again in terms of being out in the world and someone saying contract. I always want you to look at a contract and have a red flag and say, prove it. Prove to me you had those 5 elements and they were all valid, because if you can't, you have an agreement. And it might still be enforceable, but we're not operating under the same terms. You're going to sound very articulate, relevant, concise when you come at somebody else with that kind of knowledge, okay? So the team exercise, or the team deliverable 1, really, I was excited about grading these. They turned out really well. I gave feedback where necessary. You can tell I'm reading line by line. So when I see changes in fonts, size, copy and pasting, extra words put in, those were all marked through. I did not use a red pen, so it didn't look like it was bleeding on anybody's paper, but I want you to take those notations, and some of you didn't have many notations at all. You just did exactly what you needed to do. So I was very, very pleased. It didn't take me that long to grade everything, which was wonderful, because that means everybody's doing thing in compliance with your selected business. So that makes me very happy. So congrats on that, and I'm looking forward to deliverable 2. Now, with course content, it is Wednesday, and I do not see a lot of posts for our week 4 post, and it's not the run-of-the-mill type of discussion board. For this one, I asked about you locating a current event from a newsworthy source, so please no Daily Mail, and it's a subject matter under Chapter 12, so whistleblower, wrongful death, Sarbanes-Oxley, consumer protection were some of the things that I stated here. I gave you guys a lot, and some people have written me and said, is it okay if I choose topic XYZ? And generally they've been fine. So I really love these discussion boards because generally everybody's topic is different. It's rare that I see things in the duplicative. Just make sure that you follow the directions about the word count, the date, the source, the topic, and the content. And then, of course, 6, any conclusions. You need to respond to somebody else's post, okay? So my only rule is if you happen to see a post similar to yours, you can look at it, but I generally don't want you to comment on that one. I want you to discover something new. That's kind of this midway point in week 4 why we do this type of a discussion board, where you guys have parameters but pretty much free reign within a topic to find something that you think is interesting and relevant, okay? So for the discussion board, please, we have those Thursday deadlines, and I do check those out. So please make sure that you are adhering to the time frames so you can be afforded the points for it. All right, so once again, quiz 3 has just opened up for you guys, and for save of time, I think that we as a class are moving very well. Your quiz 2 average was 95%. I mean, everybody's doing great in the class. My big concern is that you are learning. And if you ever feel you want to meet with me on the Clearwater campus, or maybe an alternate campus where we can meet face-to-face if you're having issues or you want to talk about some things related to the class and the law. I know I've got a lot of questions about what's going on currently in DC. And I use that very broadly of what's going on in DC, because there's lots of things going on in DC right now. So if you have any specific questions about how, say, our branches of government are working right now, or you see something in the news, a lot of us as lawyers right now, the basic stance we take is that we want to help you understand this, but we can help you understand this from a very factual point of view. This is what's happening. Generally, if someone asks us our opinion, we really don't give our opinion. If we give an opinion, it's a legal opinion or legal advice, but we're very hesitant to do just that. And so in this very neutral environment where we are at SPC, I can generally help explain enough to have people gain an understanding of the factual elements of what's going on. Say it's executive orders or appointments. I mean, there's just so many things happening. And I want everybody to feel comfortable that at least they're aware of why things are happening, and kind of a ping pong match we're singing between all the branches of government right now. So I throw that out there to you guys that, I'm not going to engage in a highly, contentious political discussion, because I just don't get into that. But what I do get into, and what I'm very passionate about, is making sure people understand our branches of government and why people have certain powers, and how most of our system are shared powers. If you look at the main 3 articles, 1, 2, 3, are legislative, executive, and judicial. Generally, someone can't act solely on their own. So there's a shared system of powers. So if you ever have any questions on that, I'm happy to help you articulate and kind of interpret some of the media coverage out there, okay? So I throw that out there if anybody wants to take advantage of it. Happy to do it live. But otherwise, you guys are working great in your teams. Everybody's communicating, and I'm very pleased with everything. So with that said, I will see you guys probably next week on a video, and good luck with your articles and your groups.